What's up, Bucs fans? Welcome to another edition of Pirate Parlay here on the Sick Podcast Network. Bucs with a heartbreaking loss against the San Francisco 49ers. They dropped in the 4-6 on the season. But you know what? They did have a chance in that game, as little as it may have been, to come back and come alive. And the Bucs have not been out of any game all season at halftime. They've got to turn it around and push forward and figure out what's happening after halftime, that we are just imploding on ourselves and keep dropping L's. But we'll get into all that and more with this very special guest, and you'll find out who it is on the other side. Later.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
We are here on another edition of the Pirate Parlay podcast. I'm very excited to welcome in our next guest to go over this Bucs team, the outlook for the remainder of this season, talk about this last game. He is a former Pewter reporter, shout out alumni, and currently the lead draft analyst for PFF and the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange. He is Mr. Trevor Sikkema.
JC, it's so good to be with you, my friend. It feels like we've been basically playing a DM game of like phone tag for the last like month and a half. And it just feels like every time you're about to record a podcast, like I'm not available. So I'm excited that here before Thanksgiving, we were able to make it work, man, because I've been waiting to kind of come on the podcast and unload some Bucs thoughts with you. So I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Always welcome here at Tampa Bay Trey. I love the tree in the background. It's really aesthetically pleasing to my eyes. You know, you've got those eyes that lose you anyways. So, you know, the tree there kind of makes it easier to talk to you and not get lost. So.
Dude, we're actually we're traveling for the holidays. I'll be down in Florida visiting the family, and we wanted to make sure that when we got back after Thanksgiving, it was already full Christmas season. So we had to put them up before Thanksgiving. I know some people think that that's sacrilegious, but you know what?
Say less, man.
It's my house. I'm gonna do what I want to do. So I'm gonna put up the Christmas tree. You know.
Interior decorations have been done like 3 days after Halloween in this house.
There you go. There you go.
I'm not doing exterior until after Thanksgiving. I'm not going to be an exterior decorator, but like interior, yeah. I mean, something about the lights, the ambiance it brings. We're getting out of here because out of the way here, but it's been a busy day for you. Position rankings came out. Top 75 big board came out for the draft. Just crushing it over at PFF. Your work is just phenomenal. If you guys aren't checking it out, I don't know what you're doing with your life, because this man puts in the hours, he puts in the work, he puts in the effort. He had, I think, 6 different rankings come out, a big board on top of recaps of games as well, like nonstop. Yeah,
man, we are full steam ahead. I mean, since I got the lead draft analyst role, which I'm pumped to be in, we've been all systems go really since August, and we've been trying to give people the opportunity to, whenever they wanted to dip their toe in the water, whether it's Bucs fans or whatever team you're a fan of, whenever you want to dip your toe in the water of that upcoming NFL draft class, we got you ready. So we're all the way up to 250 players ranked on the PFF big board right now. It's obviously broken up into positions. You can sort by positions, like you mentioned, with the rankings, all that good stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's been awesome to do during the season. And again, anytime anybody wants to kind of come over into draft season, we got you.
I know the Bucs fans are waiting on bated breath for you to put out their 5-round mock. Meanwhile, I'm a Pats fan at heart, so please let it play out the way you put it out there, because Harrison, Daniels, and Nehemiah Pritchard's one of my favorite guys. I've loved him for the last 2 years. But we're getting off the rails here. Let's dive into this Bucs loss against the San Francisco 49ers. What were your immediate thoughts after watching that game? What did you come away with? This Bucs team has not been out of a game at halftime. It seems like second half, third quarter, just they implode. But what were your immediate thoughts and reactions to that game?
Honestly, this game went exactly the way I thought it was going to. San Francisco is clearly the better football team. They are in a much further place in their winning window than Tampa is. They have a more established roster. They have a more talented roster, and they won the football game. And it's just like, yeah, I think that Tampa was in there at the end. Obviously, they were making a big drive towards the end of the game. Even if they score that touchdown there at the end of the game, I mean, you're kind of asking for a miracle to kind of come back and actually get into a position where you have a chance to win. But that's kind of been the story of this Tampa Bay team. For a long time, I've been saying that this is a this is a like kind of a measurement stick team where if you lose to the Bucs, okay, you're probably not going to be a playoff team. But if you can beat the Bucs, okay, well, that probably means you are a playoff team. So it's not like I think Tampa is terrible. Now, there's a lot of really frustrating things that it feels like have happened with this team where week in and week out, something's not going right. And you can point to little things and say, man, if they did this a little bit different in this game, if they don't play terrible defense against CJ Stroud, like all this kind of like maybe you're even close to 500 for this team. So they're never really out of it. And that kind of feels like a microcosm of what we felt this team was going to be going into the year. The roster was too good for them to just be terrible. Right. But you also looked at a lot of question marks on the team and said, okay, well, that's probably what's going to hold them back from being great. And I truly feel as though this past weekend against the 49ers, it was a perfect encapsulation of what this Bucs team is. They're okay in a lot of areas, but they're not going to beat the 49ers. They're also not going to get blown out. So it's just, that's how it played out, I think, in every single facet.
I think it's one of those things. So you brought up the talent on this team is just too good. And there are certain areas where you looked and you're like, well, that might hold them back. One of those areas that you didn't feel like was going to hold them back was a secondary, right? You paid Carlton Davis 2 years ago. You paid Jamel Dean this year. You have Antoine Winfield Jr., who is an all-pro in the making. And then Ryan Neal, who was your, over at PFF, your highest graded safety last year, comes in and just is not. And I get Bowles is using him out of position a lot. He's better closer to the box. Not as good as a free safety, but when you have a guy like Antoine Winfield with the damage he can do in the box, there's got to be some give and take between those two. But this is what's wrong with the secondary. What is going on with it? I mean, the bend don't break is just, especially against a team like the Niners, who just yak and yak, yards after contact, yards after catch. They're just phenomenal at it. And what's going on with them?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because you mentioned on paper going into the season, this unit was actually a pretty good one, right? I think that Carlton Davis at his best is one of the top 10 corners in the NFL when he's playing the way that we know that he could play. I think Jamel Dean, okay, maybe he's not a shutdown corner. Maybe he's a little bit more up and down, but he's certainly been able to give you those up games along with the down games. And both of those players not having good seasons at all whatsoever. Both when they've been put into I think that there have been times when there's been a lot more off coverage than I think people thought that they would see from this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team this year. And like, all right, Dean and Davis, both of them, they're much more press man type of corners. They're much more aggressive, which is normally what Todd Bowles wants you to do. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because of the lack of pressure up front. There's like the lack of production from the edge rushers, but he's keeping these guys off and they're really struggling because of that. Christian Izzy, and I mean, I think that beginning of the season, yeah, fantastic. He's playing well, but he's still a rookie. He's still going to
undrafted at that.
Exactly. Right. And so it's hard to think that he was going to be able to sustain that throughout the whole season. I think the secondary play is very much a roller coaster anyways. I know that Bucs fans know who AJ Terrell is. AJ Terrell, the cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons. Early on, I can't remember if it was rookie year or the year after. He was like an elite corner one of those early years. It might have been that first year. He was just an elite shutdown corner. And then the very next year, he was terrible. I mean, like he was getting burned every single week. It didn't matter what coverage it was, what receiver was going up against him. And now like he's back to, okay, he's playing really well. And so the cornerback position just in general, very up and down. So you kind of have to exactly 100%. And you kind of just have to live with it. But man, I mean, both those corners are playing poorly. Ryan Neal, I get, okay, he's more of a downhill safety. I thought he was going to play more of that role, especially when Bowles in the offseason was saying, hey, we're not going to use Antoine Winfield Jr. in the slot nearly as much. We're going to use him as that single high free safety because he's so good at it. So that's why I thought that Neal was going to be a perfect addition because I thought that he was awesome when he was in Seattle. So he comes over and I'm like, man, this is the most underrated critical signing of the offseason. And it turns out, he's playing a lot of too deep safety stuff and the angles are poor. The anticipation's poor. I mean, it's just to the point where you're wondering, is there anybody else on the roster who can take his snaps at this point? So there's no doubt about it. Like you can sometimes deal with one of your, I'll say 5 secondary starters because nickel is the new base.
Right.
You can sometimes deal with maybe one of those guys playing poorly throughout a season. They've got 3 of them playing well below expectation, an undrafted rookie at the other spot, and then an all-pro guy. But, there's only so much that Antoine Winfield Jr. can do. And so I'm very shocked at how poorly this secondary is playing.
Yeah, and it's tough too because you see what they did last week against the Titans. And again, the Titans are a different team, but playing that more press man coverage. I mean, Jamel Dean per PFF has graded out as one of the best cornerbacks in the league for the last 3 years when he plays press man coverage.
Right.
And you look at what they've been doing 10 yards off. I mean, there was a play, I think it was like 3rd and 7 where the corners were barely in the screen. You know, they're playing 10 yards off the ball on a 3rd and 7 against a team that is tremendously good with the ball in their hands, either breaking tackles or making guys miss. So it's mind-boggling that Bowles is continuing to play. And I mean, all that press man coverage does is makes the pressure look better, because when you're locking those guys up a little bit more, it gives the pressure a little bit more time to get home. And the fact that he's been playing them off so much. I mean, they had another undrafted guy, Kayvon Merriweather, taking the snaps over at strong safety this past game, and he played all right, but something's got to change in that secondary or with the coaching or with the play calling, because they're not putting their guys in a position to succeed. Somebody who doesn't matter what Bowles is calling in a position to succeed, and hopefully he's not too banged up. We're hearing it's a groin injury for Lavonte David, but man, I mean, this is a guy who they did not want to sign to a big money deal, goes out, tests the market, nobody's looking for. I thought Miami would have been a perfect fit. He's from Miami. He lives in Miami in the offseason. They had a need. They decided to pass on him, go with a couple other guys, especially after losing Landon Roberts. And he comes back, and he's just having a Lavonte David season. Like, his counterpart, Devin White, has been such a roller coaster after teasing us for the first 2 games, having some solid games. He's back to just an inefficient, missed tackling, out of place in coverage. I don't know. Where do the Bucs go from here with both of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, Devin White is the conversation that I think Bucs fans have been having a lot over the last, I would say, year and a half, is what do you do with this player, right? You draft him as highly as they did, and I think he's obviously a great athlete. I think he is a great Todd Bowles, I'll say X factor, because I don't think he's necessarily like a chess piece, right? Like Lavonte David's a chess piece, right? I mean, Antoine Winfield Jr. is a chess piece. I wouldn't call Devin White a chess piece type of a player. I think that he's an X factor type of a player, where when you have a Lavonte David who gets to play next to him, well, that leaves Devin to play a lot more free. Now, I do agree. I thought that he was playing better in coverage at the beginning of the year, but I think he's kind of regressed a little bit more towards kind of what he has been over the last year or so when it comes to coverage. And so, look, if they have 2 very, very important players whose contracts are coming up in Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tristan Wirfs, you have to make sure you have the money for those players. They play more valuable positions, and they're just better and more consistent overall. I don't know what they're going to do with Devin White and his money, because I don't know what the outlook is going to be ultimately for Lavonte David and how much longer he's going to be on their books. The same can be said with Mike Evans, where I've always thought that Mike Evans was going to come back to Tampa Bay. I don't think that he is going anywhere, but does that money goes into what you do with Devin White? Because I don't know if you can bring back everybody that is an upcoming pending free agent with Mike Evans and Devin White, and then obviously the other 2 that I talked about that you have to prioritize. And that's not also to mention, what do you do with Baker Mayfield, right? Because you look at a lot of the issues on offense, and I figure we'll probably get to this point, but like, it's not his fault. You know, he's not playing like a world beater, but he's certainly looking like a starting caliber NFL quarterback, where if things were better around him, if the offensive line was a little bit better, if they could run the ball a little bit better, we're talking about a different offense. And so I think that he at least has them in position to win plenty of games, even against some really good teams. So we saw shades of that this past weekend. We certainly saw it when they played the Buffalo Bills, right? And so I think that that's another conversation there. So ultimately, I would like Devin White to come back, but the contract that it has just been rumored about that he is going to seek, which good for him. He should. All
right. And that goes back to the combine. Like, saying, before he was drafted, I'm going to be $100 million player in 5 years.
And of course, like he should want to be $100 million, right? Like he should absolutely be saying that at all times, because if somebody's going to give him $100 million, okay, like go get it. I don't think it should be the Buccaneers. So if it's going to be anywhere close to the contract that he wants, I think Tampa would be best letting him walk, especially if Bowles is no longer going to be the head coach. you're probably going to have somebody else come in. And Bowles has loved how he gets to use Devin White as, like I said, this X factor type of player, quarterback spy, a heavy blitzer, like things like that. Would the next defensive mind, whether it's a defensive minded head coach or whether it's a new defense coordinator, if they end up making a lot of coaching changes, do they have the same X factor philosophy with Devin White? Because if you don't, that's a lot of money to pay an off-ball linebacker that's not giving you the production that you would want. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if he drops down to like 11, maybe 13, I think you consider it if Bowles is here. But if not, you got to move on. Sticking on the defense, and then we'll hop over to the offensive side. JTS, Logan Hall. Is it time to call him busts? Are we at that level yet, or do we need to see a little bit more, especially at a Hall going into a second year?
Yeah, I just JTS. I don't know if bust is the word, right? Because one of them was, what was he, very first pick of the second round or something, whatever Logan Hall was.
32 and 33. I mean, they're right.
So they were right there. So I don't necessarily want to call them bust, but unfortunately they haven't exactly lived up to the potential. You would have wanted Logan Hall to be a more well-rounded, kind of versatile defensive lineman. And I just don't think he's consistent enough. Like, he just hasn't turned into that player. I wasn't his biggest fan coming into the draft, but I felt like for Todd Bowles and how multiple Tampa likes to get up front, I feel like he could have been a really nice piece. I just don't think he's impactful enough. He's just not making enough impactful plays in the game. So bust, I don't know. It's hard to call a guy a bust when he's kind of like around that pick. You know, I reserve the bust word for, you know, top 15, top 12 picks that you're really invested in big things on. But there's no doubt about it. I think both of these guys have been disappointing. I was super excited for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I thought the Bucs got a steal when they were able to draft him. Shoot, that first preseason, it felt like the dude was on fire. And it's like, oh my gosh, the league effed up, right? They let Tampa Bay get this guy. And so unfortunately, again, when I have watched him, and I'm not going to pretend to have watched every single snap, but when I have watched JTS, it feels as though if he is not jumping the snap, which can be an art, right? That can be a skill. So I don't want to totally take it away from him.
Von Miller does it better than anyone.
100%. But Vaughn,
Vaughn's more complete packaged. I'm not comparing Vaughn to JTS.
No, I know you're not, but this is.
I know you know, but I don't want people in the comments to be like,
this is a continuation of kind of
Bucs fan we're talking about.
Right. So like Von Miller, not only is he an artist at jumping the snap, he's also incredibly flexible when it comes to bending around the edge. He's got great hand usage and he's got really good explosiveness. JTS, when he times the snap count, he's just okay at that other stuff. Right. And so it's not really like a boom. If he times the snap correctly, the offensive tackle doesn't have a prayer. I mean, that outside shoulder is cooked. And it's just not even the snaps that he can time well. I've seen him not be able to corner the outside shoulder as much as you would think that he was able to do. So again, there's no doubt about it. I think that he has been disappointing. And unless he really ends the year and with his hair on fire, I don't think he's going to like get cut from the team or anything, but
probably not a fifth-year option.
I've gone through these exercises in mock drafts. Like, I think about edge rusher a lot with Tampa's first pick, right? If you're not in contention for a Drake May, a Caleb Williams, somebody like that at the quarterback position, I immediately look towards edge, and I'm like, you got to get way better in this area, because I like Elijah Cansey, I like Vita Vea. I think that's a great duo inside, but it's very clear that number one, outside of Shaq Barrett, and even Shaq, I mean, he's not the same Shaq that we saw that had the sack title many years ago. You got to get better at edge rusher, and the guys that they have on the roster right now, outside of maybe Marquise Watts, who's like kind of good when they put him out there, outside of him, there's just not a lot of like impact plays from the edge position.
Well, that's who I wanted to go to next, kind of Yaya Diaby, and we'll talk about some of these rookies. But Yaya Diaby, the thing about him is he's got the same like physique, same like kind of look as Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but his ability to bend the corner, his athleticism, I think, is better. And I think and I'm not like dubbing him, the next, but Bucs fans are ready, and our guys at PR are ready to dub him. They had a whole podcast on giving Yaya more snaps after his 2-sack weekend. But shout out to those guys. But I think they have a building block there with Yaya Diaby, and I've been really impressed with his come on as a rookie. He only played, 21 snaps this past weekend. Definitely deserves more, I think. Marquise Watts only had 3. Definitely thinks he has deserved more, but when you look at these guys, what the rookies can do, and I'll talk about Yaya, but also on the defensive side of the ball with Kalijah Kancey. I mean, wow. I mean, just yeah, as advertised, better than advertised, especially against the run and double teams. But just talk about some of these rookies for them. Yaya, Kalijah, Izzy, Mock, Palmer. Is Palmer legit number 2, number 3? What are your thoughts on him? And break down that rookie class for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got an absolute gem in Trey Palmer. I mean, their trio right now of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Trey Palmer. I mean, that's good enough for any starting caliber quarterback to win with. I mean, that group is really, really nice, and I love what they have in Palmer. I think that he is going to be a true weapon for them moving forward. Yeah, you mentioned it. Like, I had Kalijah Kancey as a top 20 player last year. I still believed in him, despite him being a size outlier, just because of how crazy this dude's get off was. I mean, the way that he gets up into the chest of these centers and guards, I mean, it's nuts, man. You've got even some of the best athletes at the interior positions in the game of football. They're like, whoa, okay, like you're here already. And they're almost just like totally caught off guard. And I mean, he's been great. I think that he understands, like when he's getting double teamed, you know, like he understands the technique, you know, he'll put the knee down with a corkscrew technique and just try to do whatever he can to like stop any kind of double team or any kind of push, stuff like that. And again, playing next to Vita Vea is great. And I said before the draft, I wasn't so totally sold on Kalijah Kancey being a first-round caliber pick for every team in the NFL. Tampa was one of those I would have been sold on because you get to play next to a absolute planet in Vita Vea next to him. And Vita Vea is so imposing that you cannot dare single block this guy or he will forklift somebody straight back into the quarterback's lap. And even though, okay, maybe it's not like as quick as an Aaron Donald, Jeffrey Simmons, whatever, it's disruption. It is completely collapsing the pocket from the inside. So you always have to devote extra eyes and extra bodies towards Vita Vea. That gives Kalijah Kancey more favorable opportunities, whether it's one-on-one blocks or whether it's giving him a crease to shoot a gap, something like that. So I just love this pairing. He's been phenomenal. There's no question about it.
Vita Vea's athleticism is so underrated too. I mean,
dude.
He's got a quick get off himself. And I mean, you watch plays get out that break the outside. He's running 20 yards down the field, full sprint, keeping up with running backs. But so yeah, go ahead with the rest of this draft class. Your thoughts on them with Mock and Yaya.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that Mock is coming along. Obviously, it was going to be a work in progress for him. This guy who played, well, yeah, I think a lot of people start the conversation with Cody Mock and say like, oh, this is a guy who played tackle in college who's kicking into the inside. Okay, yeah, it's that, but you got to realize he got to North Dakota State as a tight end, right? Yes. I mean, so it's not like his journey started as a left tackle and we're kicking him inside just because he has short arms. His journey started as a tight end. And you see that at North Dakota State because he moves really well as a left tackle. And I mean, at the Senior Bowl, they kicked him inside to center. They kicked him inside at guard. I actually wonder if center is ultimately like his best position just because he's got really good natural. Yeah, it's like you got a lot of good natural leverage there. I think he's got good weight on his body right now. But if you're trying to be a real difference-making starting caliber guard, I feel like you got to be even bigger than he is right now. But at center, you can get away with it because you can be very quick. You can be a puller. You can obviously like get up into nose tackles very, very quickly. So like, I think the center is probably the ultimate position for him, but I think he's learning. He's fine. And then Diaby, he's somebody who's obviously very, very interesting because you look at I just pulled it up, his combine scores. This is a guy who at 6'3", a little over 6'3", 263 pounds. Okay. He's running a 1.56 10-yard split, which is 93rd percentile for edge rushers. And then he also had a 4.51 40-yard dash, which is 96th percentile for edge rushers. So
that's size.
We're talking about an explosive player. And going back a little bit to what we were just discussing with corners, and you know, you talked about how when you play press coverage, sometimes it can buy extra time for your rushers to get home a little bit more. But the opposite can also be true. If you play press coverage and you don't get home, well, then all of a sudden, if you got to be asked to play press man coverage for 3-4 seconds, you're going to be cooked more often than not. One of those guys is going to get open. It's just the game of football. Wide receivers are too good. And I think the problem with the Bucs pass rush and edge rushers right now is unless Kancey's getting home shooting a gap up the middle, nobody's getting home quick enough to be able to maybe play as much press coverage as you want. Whereas Diaby gives you that kind of explosiveness where he has the ability and the athleticism to at least get in the backfield a little bit quicker. Now, does he know how to beat the block? Maybe not. Does he have a ton of pass rush moves? Okay, maybe not at this point, but he is somebody who, towards the second half of this season, the rest of this season, I'd like to see him get more opportunities because he, at the very least, will get in the backfield quicker than what a lot of the guys who are getting the regular rotation have been able to do.
And that was the whole plan with him, pairing him with Vita Vea, that disruption up the middle funnels that quarterback to the left or the right, where you're hoping Shaq, who's coming back from an Achilles tear and is on the wrong side of 30, and JTS, the hope would be there with open arms, you know, like Journey, bringing them down. And but that hasn't happened for the Bucs, and it's been difficult for the rest of the team to have success because of the lack of pass rush ability that they've been able to get there. Jumping to the offensive side, I feel like on a milk there's two guys on a milk carton every week, especially to start the game. It's, you know, and it's your two highest paid wide receivers and offensive players. Where the heck is Mike and Chris in the beginning of games every week? What is your take on the usage of those two? I get smart teams are going to do everything they can to bracket these guys, take them away, and you know, and make you beat you in different scenarios. But there's got to be a way, and I think Canals has done a good job so far. There's been growing pains for sure, but I've been more impressed certainly after the shit show of last year with Todd Bowles. I mean, Byron Leftwich, that was just. Yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But usage of Mike and Chris, where's it been?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Byron to give you an answer on your EPA per play question. No, but I think, you know, it's funny. A PFF guy comes on the podcast and wants to talk about the run game. But I think that unfortunately for the Bucs, they are not good enough at running the football to be any sort of threat outside of, I would say, those two receivers, right? Cade Otton, fine. Otton's not striking fear in a defense. He's not getting the defense to shift or to move over or to motion or cause big communication. Oh, we got to know where Otton is. And that's all due respect. I really don't, I didn't mean to really, the guy to catch a big straight.
You're right.
You know, like he's not like, it's not like when Gronk was in there, right? When Gronk's in there.
Yeah,
right. I mean, like you got to know where he's at. But like even before, like even when Jameis was clicking with Cam Brate as much as he was, like Cam was so much a part of the passing game that, you know, Cam motions from the left side of the scrimmage to the right. Like you got to pay attention to him just because of how much success they have had in that regard. There's nobody else, I don't think, on this defense that actually, this offense that threatens the defense other than Mike and Chris. And I think that there's a lot of teams that dare the Buccaneers to run the football because they know they're not good at it. And they know they don't have to allocate a ton more resources to stopping that. And so if the Bucs had a more effective running game, I think things are a little different because then I think not that you have to run the ball well to be able to do play action. You certainly don't. There's been plenty of data points to say that play action is effective, whether you have a good run game or not. But I think that there is something to the threat level. Whereas like, okay, how much are you selling out for the play action? Like how much, are you getting other players that probably shouldn't be peeking into the backfield that chance to be able to do that? And so with as ineffective as they have been, I just don't think people fear it. So instead, you know, you come out, whether it's 1st and 10, whether it's 2nd and long, 3rd and long, whatever it is on those first couple of drives, they know where the ball is going.
Right.
You know, like that. And the thing is that even if they don't know where the ball's going, let's say a team gets caught off guard on 2nd and 8, you run the ball. Tampa doesn't have a good enough run game to get a first down. So it's not like you're even catching them. Like Tampa's yards per carry average is, well, last I checked, it was like 4 weeks ago, but last I checked, it was like 2.8 yards. So I think it's a little higher than that now. I think it's like a little above 3, but you know, you run if you run the ball on 2nd and 8 just because they don't think it's coming, well, you're getting 4 yards, maybe max. All of a sudden it's 3 and 4. That doesn't really change things too much for you. So they know that they're not going to do that. And Trey Palmer, for as good as he's been, he's still a rookie.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of things that are involved. And I agree with you. I would like more production from those top 2 wide receivers because it's certainly not the way that it used to be. Back when Arians was certainly calling the plays when he was early on in head coach. I know it was Jameis, so it was a different offense. But like, man, both these dudes were just lighting up the scoreboards in that vertical offense. And they have those same 2 players. So you wonder like, man, it's tough to see them being held back as much, knowing what it was just, 4 years ago or whatever. And so I truly think that they want to be balanced, but they're not effective when they're balanced. So it's just, it's making for an easier team to defend. And that's just what it seems like from my vantage point, watching these games from afar.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that initiative comes down from the top too, about the balance, and it's limiting. You can tell it's limiting what Dave wants to do as well as a play caller, that he's got to have that balance. I will say this in the first half, what he was doing with the quick passes, the screens, the bubbles, the ability. Rachaad actually got a few runs that went for more than 3 yards per carry. So when they did run that play action, you could see that there was true hesitation from two of the best linebackers in the game right now, and some of the safeties as well. But you're right. I mean, if I'm a team and I've got a good enough nickel cornerback and I've got good enough coverage linebackers, I say, okay, I'm bracketing Chris and Mike.
Right.
Fine, take a shot on the Trey Palmer or DT with my nickel cornerback and my fourth cornerback, a third safety, and I feel like I have a linebacker that can take care of Allen, And
against the better teams in the league, that's what it's going to be. Like if you're going up against top half of the league defenses, they're just not afraid enough of what Tampa's offense is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at Rachaad White, and for everything he is, he's number 2 in the league in passing yards. I think he's number 1 in the league in broken tackles, number 3 in the league in receptions. I just don't know if he's a number 1 running back in this league.
Yeah.
And I know Otten's not a number one tight end. That's for damn sure. He's proven that. I think wear some damn gloves when you're catching the ball out there, man. But with White, what are your thoughts on Rachaad White? Is he just a good number 2 running back? Is there any potential that we're not seeing because of the offensive line, perhaps because of maybe the play calling, because of what's your thoughts on Rachaad White?
Yeah, I think the interior offense is not up to par. It's not the way that it needs to be. And I think Gedecke's coming along at right tackle. He clearly looks a lot more comfortable there. Wirfs is an all-star. There's no doubt about it. I think that Mock is getting better, right? But Hainsey, I don't think was ever really drafted to be a full-time starter, right? I mean, you think about when he was drafted. He was drafted when you had guys like Ali Marpet and Ryan Jensen and Alex Kappa in the building, or at least coming off of that season. And you basically drafted Hainsey because he was a long-time experienced starter at Notre Dame. And you said to yourself, okay, well, if one of those guys goes down for a short period of time, we don't want somebody who's very green at offensive line play to come in. Instead, we'll get this guy who's played a lot of snaps, understands football very, very well, played at Notre Dame, and he'll be able to fill in. And now you're sitting here and it's like, okay, well, now he's a full-time starter because Ryan Jensen didn't come back. And I don't think that was ever the plan. Clearly, it was very much not in the plan to lose Ali Marpet the way that they did. And I think people just forget about how much Ryan Jensen's injury and Ali Marpet's retirement put this team back, because you always have Jason Light, Mike Greenberg, and John Spytek, and all these guys in the front office. You've got 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plans, 4 year, 5. You probably got up to 5 year plans of like what your team could look like, when you could lose these players, where the money's going to go, all that good stuff. And losing those 2 players the way that they did, I think really set them back in a big way that people just don't think about. So I think the interior offensive line is definitely an issue for Rachaad White. Ultimately, the way that I look at him is I think that he could be an excellent third down back in this league. Like, I think that he could be a great RB2 spell running back. Like, if they had a early down back stud, like an RB1 kind of a player, and then Rachaad White, who would come in and be like this great receiver who could also probably do a little time in the slot for you, come in on 3rd and 7s, get a good pass, make a guy miss, get a first down. Like, if he's getting better at pass protection, obviously that helps as well. But like, that would be a really nice 1-2 punch out of the backfield. So he's absolutely an NFL ball player. I just don't know if and this isn't his fault. They basically are asking him to be a full-time heavy volume running back. And I just don't think that was ever supposed to be in the cards for him.
All right. And they just don't have the pieces behind him.
Right. They don't have anybody else.
Chase Edmonds has proven ineffective. Keyshawn Vaughn probably should have been off the roster a long time ago. But, yeah, I mean, you look at it, Gedecke, just what a jump. What a redemption story, Like, talking to Chase, he's like, how good it feels to have both of your tackles. Like, how good it feels as a GM to not have to worry about your bookend tackles right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So great for him. Let's get into Baker a little bit. We touched on it for a minute earlier. Baker, answer, stopgap, or gotta go?
So I was actually having this conversation with somebody earlier today, and I think the answer is gotta go, but that's not Baker's fault. Like I think it's where this team is in their winning window, because when you look at this roster, you look at, okay, the secondary has really been struggling. So do we not have the answers with some of the guys that we just signed? Devin White could be out of the building. Who knows how much longer Levante David's going to play? You need to invest in edge rushers to get new edge rushers in there. All right, that's just on defense, right? You need probably 2 different interior offensive line spots, whether you want to keep Mock at guard or move in the center. You probably need 2 more interior offensive line spots.
Right.
Maybe one of the guys is kind of sitting in reserve, Stinney or Leverett. Maybe they can gain one of those spots, but obviously they haven't yet. So you essentially need 2 more spots along the offensive line. You probably need to find an RB1. Wide receivers you got figured out, but Mike Evans, he's a pending free agent, right? How much longer is Mike going to play? All that stuff. So to me, there are too many question marks on this roster for me to say, yeah, just give Baker a 3-year deal. Because
Geno Smith type.
And I don't like Baker is kind of deserving of that. Like he's playing well enough to have earned that. But where this team is right now in their winning window, especially if they are going to go through a big coaching change and a coaching staff change coming up, yeah, of course, there's a world where they could strike gold with the head coach, their new head coach that they're going to bring in, and they sign Baker to a 2 or a 3-year deal, and it's absolutely a match made in heaven, and it works out for them. They elevate the rest of the roster, they make the necessary changes that they need to. But to me, I think the Bucs are at least 2 more seasons, so this one and at least next season, away from getting the roster where it needs to be to compete. And I know that sucks to hear because the NFC South is super vulnerable right now, but that is where I think, like, even if the Bucs were to have won the division this year, they're getting bounced in the first round, 100%. They're not beating one of these better teams in the NFC. They're not in that same tier. And I don't know if another offseason next year gets them there either, even if they bring back Baker and keep Baker. Right. So ultimately, I think that Baker feels like a gotta go situation, but of course that depends on, okay, who's available. Like if Tampa has
many variables, right?
If Tampa has a top 2 pick and you get either Caleb Williams, Drake May, yeah, of course. Like it's easy. Like I think you're moving on. It's easy. It's no question about it. But the rest of the quarterback class, are you picking one of these guys in the first round? Is Tampa? I don't know. But right. It's hard for me to look at where this roster is right now and where I think the timeline of them are, of where it is, to get to a legitimate winning window, not a fool's gold winning window, because that's bullshit and that's bad. That puts you in purgatory. That puts you picking 15th in the draft every year, and you certainly don't want that.
Right.
I think this team needs to hit the reset button a little bit harder this offseason and probably move on from Baker, probably move on from Todd Bowles, and take the next couple of years, really get this next head coach's guys in the building, figure it out, get some new talent in there at the premium positions, and then you kind of make a run for it. But that is my opinion there.
Now, like I'm kind of in that same camp. I think there's like 2 ways that Bowles and Baker aren't both here, and that's that they just lose out, and they're just maybe win 2 more games. They finish with a 6-11 record, and then they're just like your hands are tied. But if they do go on a run here, finish, let's say 9-8, win this NFC South, I think it's going to be hard pressed for them to get rid of Bowles.
They're both staying. They're both staying at that point. Yeah.
And the only other way that I could potentially see them losing, but Baker staying, but Bowles leaving, is if they look at the landscape and maybe hire a guy like Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron comes in. He keeps on Canales, right? Because he was with Canales, who was his quarterback coach. And Canales is like, hey, if we make these improvements, we do these different things, if you let me call the way I want to call and not, be such balanced attack and everything like that, then we've got something in here. I know we do.
Yeah.
And that's maybe they give him a 3-year deal with an opt-out at 2 and kind of meet that timeline and draft a quarterback maybe year 2 and kind of sit behind Baker for a year. That's the only thing. I mean, I like Dave Canales. I like what I've seen from him. I like his energy. I like some of the play calling, the sequencing I've seen. Also, there's been stuff that I haven't seen about Canales, and then we'll wrap it up here real quick. What have you seen from Canales so far that you've liked, that you disliked? That he knows what EPA is, so that's good. He knows how the scheme guy's open for the most part. Doesn't call things fantasy football questions when you ask him. So
yeah, no, he. I think that he's doing a really good job. I do. Yeah, I think that people got to remember, like, you can't live in this microwave world of like, oh yeah, new coach, got to get better. Like, it's got to get better this second. Like, man, there were issues on this team last year with Tom Brady as their quarterback. And I know Byron Leftwich was a big issue for a lot of that, but new guy coming in, he's calling plays for the first time. Like, you got to give him time to figure it out. So anybody who's like, man, Canales has got to go. He has not been nearly bad enough for that to be the case. Now, if they end up moving on from him because it's a clean sweep of the coaching staff, like, okay, that's a different story. But I like what I've seen from him. I think he's got a great head on his shoulders. I love his approach to the game. It feels like he is very malleable with how he is approaching this offense and what's working and what's not. And, a lot of people look at like, okay, like how often they continue to run the ball and things like that. I don't know how much of that is necessarily in his hands, right? I mean, the head coach has their fingerprints on the identity of this team, whether it's an offensive or a defensive coordinator. So, Bowles being a defensive coordinator, I'm sure that he's preaching a lot like, hey, we got to control the clock. We got to control the time of possession. I don't want my defense to be gassed, like all this kinds of stuff. So there's a big preaching of balance. And I'm not saying that Canales is like totally against that. I don't know where he stands, but ultimately, I think what I'm saying is, I am taking away a lot more good than I am bad with him this season, just because of the context of him taking over for Leftwich, him coming into a situation where it was an already established coach who was like kind of on the hot seat. You're coming into an offense. It's a brand new quarterback. I mean, Baker's he hasn't been with these receivers. He hasn't been with this coordinator. So, man, I think there's more good than bad. I really do. And I actually like the job that Canales has been doing this season.
Yeah, I think there's been growing pains, but I think not as bad as the situation, and definitely some influence on what he's trying to do on a week in and week out basis. On to Indianapolis, they've got Anthony Richardson lists Indianapolis, and then you look at the schedule down the line. Games against another game against Atlanta, two games against the Panthers. They've got the Jags in there. They got the Saints in there. Then they have another game against the
Packers. I think
Packers as well. Lambeau, going to that game. I can't wait. First time.
Nice, man. So, nice. You're gonna love it.
I'm so excited. But looking down that, what's your optimism for the rest of the season? I think we kind of talked about what camp you're in with the Bulls goes clean sweep, kind of, maybe not aim for a high draft pick, but it certainly helps. We know John is all about the draft pick. Get rid of Bulls, get the high draft pick. He's like, Bucs fans hate me for it, but
No, look, I mean, I think that John and I kind of see it similarly, where you look at their situation right now, and it just feels like they have a low ceiling. And that's never a good feeling. Like you never want to invest in a current regime or a current situation or a current roster that has a low ceiling. And it feels like Tampa has kind of a low ceiling right now. And maybe that changes next season, but you also don't want to just go like, yeah, it'll be better next year. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I think it's you don't want to be ignorant about kind of the faith that you have in the current regime. So I know John's a lot more hardcore for it, but I am closer to his camp of thinking, and that's why I say the thing about Baker, where it's like, man, it all depends on what quarterbacks are available, obviously, but I think I'd be leaning towards having him move on just because I think of that timeline. Look, when I look at this schedule, the crazy thing is, not a single game is like an automatic loss, right? No. I mean, every single game that they have remaining is winnable, every single one of them. So who knows where this team is at when we get to the end of the season. 2 games against the Panthers, I mean, and they're putrid right now. I mean, those could be 2 wins. The Falcons, they were close to them right there. The Saints, they've already beat them once. The Packers are very, very up and down every single week. Jags are kind of the same way. I think that's probably their toughest opponent, right? Yeah, because of just the roster that they have, but they put up some stinkers as well. And then the Colts, I think the Colts they're a tough team. I like Shane Steichen a lot, their head coach, but it's not like they're world beaters, certainly without Richardson. So it's one of those things where I think people look at the Bucs right now, and certainly coming off the 49ers game, it feels like it's hopeless. It feels like they're going to lose most of the games they have throughout the rest of the season. Maybe they do, but on paper, you can win every single one of these games. I know they won't win every single one of these games, but there's not an automatic loss that they have on the rest of their schedule.
No, there's that school of thought that says, well, Bowles has still had the shorthand. He came in, couldn't make any changes to the staff. Free agency was over. Bruce just kind of dumped it on his lap his first year. His second year, 40% of the cap is on guys who are no longer on this team. Couldn't make any splashes. You got 13 rookies on the active roster. A bunch of undrafted guys starting and making plays for you so far this season. It's like, give him a chance, right? Give him a chance to build the team the way he wants to build it. Then there's the other school of thought that says in-game management is still poor. What he's preaching is poor. His defense has been some of the sole reasons why they've lost games so far, and he's supposed to be the defensive guy. Then they go back in their mind to the all-out blitz against the Rams that prevented them from potentially getting that, back-to-back. And then you have the other. So, I have a poll running right now. I think there's somewhere around, 850 votes, and it's right there. What do you want to do? Do you want to lose, get a high pick, clean sweep? Do you want to do you want to win the South? Maybe even lose the first round, and give Bowles some cap space. And it's, 49% want to keep Bowles, get the playoffs, 51% want to lose, and it's that give and take. We've gone through so many losing seasons. How could you 18 years of, without a playoff berth, how could you not want this team? And the other ones, this team isn't going to do anything, and it's going to be in this level of mediocrity if we don't make a change now. Why push it off for another year? And so it's tough. It's tough to fall right there. I'm kind of, bad on the same thing. I'm not in the camp that the Pat should fire Belichick by any means, but it's like, what do you do? Do you kind of just put Zappy in and ride out the season? You're already bad, or
you should. They should.
They should. If we can salvage it,
they should.
But all right, well, we'll get to one real quick because I know you just had your midseason mock come out. You had the Bucs taking edge, Latu.
Yeah, close. Yeah, that was good.
I don't know.
It's an intimidating name. It's a very intimidating name when you look at it on paper.
Latu.
There you go, baby. That's it. Yeah.
So, I've watched him in a few games. I'm not a huge college guy, so I start to pay attention around now because I feel like, the good teams are always going to have the good players, the better players. And I'll start, peeking around PFF. I've done a few mocks. There you go. Already. But the guy's a monster. He's an absolute monster. And I think has Edge 1 written all over him in the NFL. But no quarterback. Did mention Penix there, Tampa kid, if they did want to go quarterback early. But what are your thoughts so far? Because you are the draft guy on what the Bucs should potentially do in this draft. Let's say they do have a top 10 pick, or right around that's 11, 10 to 12. They missed the playoffs. And then if they do make the playoffs, obviously be the 19, probably one and done, in and out. What do you think they should look for?
Yeah, I think that edge is the position that stands out the most to me. Again, if you're picking in the top 2 and you got a chance to take Caleb Williams or Drake May, you're going to sprint the card in. You're not going to think twice about it. But, if they're picking somewhere within the top 15, it's right around the 10. You got Latu from UCLA, who's just an absolute sack master. He is so incredible. He had a neck injury. He was actually at Washington, or he started his career at Washington. He had a neck injury that forced him to medically retire from the game of football. He ended up taking a full year and a half off of football, wanted to come back because his personal doctors, I think, had cleared him to play. Washington's doctors would not clear him to play again. So he ends up transferring to UCLA. They clear him to play. And I got a good friend who works in the UCLA program, and he's told me, he's like, we don't have a restriction on him. Like, he's fine. He's good to go. We don't have him in any sort of like pitch count or workout count or anything. Like, he's healthy. He's fully healthy. And we've cleared him to play in the last 2 years. He's been incredible. But yeah, Jared Verse, an edge rusher from Florida State, Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama, Chop Robinson, the edge rusher from Penn State. All 3 of these guys I think would be welcomed additions. And that's where my mind goes first. It really is. If you have the opportunity, maybe if Brock Bowers, the tight end from Georgia, if he ends up dropping to you wherever you pick, that's immediate tight end 1. Not that they necessarily need pass catchers right now, but that's a major offensive difference maker for you at the tight end position. So that's somebody that you would think about there as well. But I don't know how much I would. What'd you say?
What do you think quarterback for him?
I
You
mean,
don't think Bo or Penix or Shador or Jalen Daniels?
I like Bo a lot. I think that Bo could be a top 12 pick. I really do. I think that he should be in the conversation there. Penix, I like. I think he's more of like a back end of the first round type of a quarterback that you take a chance on, because for as much as would you say?
Age and injury.
I mean, age and injury go into it, but he's been healthy the last 2 years, so it doesn't really matter to me. And if you're good at quarterback, you play quarterback until you're 38. So I don't really care about that if I think that you're good enough of a player.
That's true.
What bugs me about Penix is there's a little bit of accuracy issues, especially when he's trying to take heat off the fastball. Like when he is throwing a rope to you, I mean, this dude can just rifle it straight at you as a wide receiver. But sometimes when it comes, you could point to plenty of great touch passes from him, and I would agree. But sometimes the ball placement's a little bit spotty from him at the NFL level. That can get you in big trouble. Jaden Daniels is somebody who is climbing the boards, man. I did not think this dude was going to be anything close to a first-round pick, and he is having an unbelievable season. Not just as a rusher and a dual-threat player like he was going into the year, but also as a big-time passer. I mean, he's way more comfortable in the pocket than he was in the past. He will hang in between the tackles and go through that extra progression and that extra read. He's been fantastic passing the ball to two really great receivers this year, so like he's in that conversation. But honestly, what?
I was going to say, where does McCarthy and Shador land if he does come out?
I like Shador more than I like McCarthy. McCarthy worries me, man. I just think that a lot of what he's had to deal with over the last 2 years has been very easy. And when obviously like how he plays this weekend against Ohio State is going to be huge. If they win that game, it's the Big Ten championship game. That'll be big. Although I think they're playing like Iowa, so I don't think it's that big of an opponent. And then of course, like if you win that game, you're in the college football playoffs. So like those are huge for him too. He has a chance to obviously improve his stock, but he's still a tick late on throws. Like Penix, and I actually think McCarthy's worse than Penix at this. When he has to put touch on the passes, when he's not throwing 100 miles an hour, it starts to get shaky. And he starts to put the ball in harm's way. He's not as quick getting to his progressions as you want. He's not as quick feeling from the pocket as you want. So I think he is a very talented thrower, but I still think he is a ways away from being a good quarterback. Shador, I like a lot, handles pressure really well. I think that he's got great anticipation and accuracy. He's got a good arm. I wouldn't say that it's great. Like, I don't think that he is putting this ball on a frozen rope at the NFL level. So the thing that really keeps me from vaulting Shador into like a first round type of a quarterback is I think the arm is adequate, but I don't know if it's like difference making at the NFL level. That's kind of where I come to with Shador.
Let's say Mike leaves. What are your thoughts? I know you love I know you love Rome. So
he's sick.
Rome and Nabors. What are your thoughts on or neighbors? Nabors.
Yeah.
Neighbors. Okay, I don't got the pronunciations down yet. I'll get
it's fine. Hey, that's why I'm here. Oh no, so if Mike walks, then all of a sudden you need another wide receiver, and so I would not be opposed to. They're not going to be picking high enough to get Marvin Harrison Jr., but like if anybody's still on the board between Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, I'm not as high on Keon Coleman as I was kind of to start the season. I think he's a little bit hot and cold and he struggles with separation, which kind of worries me. But those two dudes, Neighbors and Odunze, I am very big fans of, but this receiver class is loaded. So you could they could draft a receiver in the second round that ends up being their wide receiver one at some point. Right. I mean, like it's just, they're that talented. So you consider wide receiver, but I would still tell you, even if Mike walks, hit edge rusher in the top 15, go get a wide receiver at the top of the second round.
Speaking of wide receiver, Justin Watson, former Buck, bringing in the touchdown for the Chiefs there.
Oh, I don't have it on. We got to get it on.
All right. Yeah. So final thing, I challenge you 3 sides minimum. I raise you three meats minimum.
Okay.
Got to do 3 meats, I feel like. But no, Thanksgiving around the corner. What's your favorite side? What's your favorite dish? What are you looking forward to? I'm with you on the pumpkin and sweet potato pie camp. Get rid of them. I'll even get rid of pecan pie too. Pecan.
Oh, don't do that. No. You went too far. You went too far.
Oh, give me apple. Give me chocolate cream pie over pecan pie.
Okay, all right. Look, if you like apple pie, I won't get on you too hard.
I'm there.
Good pecan pie though. So, come on, man. But you said, are you from New England? You said
I am.
Okay, so all right. You're from up north. You probably haven't had a good. You probably didn't have good enough pecan pie. So we'll get there. We'll get there. But look, I'm a turkey over ham guy. I understand some people go to turkey and your family doesn't know how to cook turkey and it's dry as hell and you just and you hate it. But like, I feel bad for you, like I'm a turkey guy. Throw the gravy on there, throw the mashed potatoes on there, throw the stuffing on there. Like that is like the perfect plate for me. So I'm a turkey as the main meat guy. Well, of course, this is saying like, if your family serves prime rib or steak or something, obviously that's the go-to. But between turkey and ham, I'm team turkey all the way. And then my favorite side, no question about it. My grandmother is Italian.
Okay.
And she makes a stuffing that has Italian sausage in it. So a little bit of Italian flair in there. And it is wonderful. So that is my favorite. That is my favorite Thanksgiving.
You got the lasagna. Oh
yeah. We got the lasagna, baby.
You got that mixture, right? The Italian Thanksgivings and Christmases. It's always like it's like half Italian dinner.
Yeah,
Sunday
baby.
Night dinner versus you gotta have the turkey and some of the cranberry sauce. What is it, canned or you guys go with the berries?
I'm not a big cranberry sauce guy, but I think we go with like we go with the non-canned one. Like it's not like you're opening the can, you're just like letting the thing just like slap onto the plate. We don't really do that at our house. So
yeah, my kids don't eat turkey. They're not big into turkeys, so we have to substitute. Last year we did a chicken, which was different, but you get a big chicken this year. I'm like, whatever. I'm not a big turkey guy, and maybe I haven't had it great.
You're watching football anyways. Just get hot wings. Just
I'm
chicken
doing
wings.
Barbecue this year. I'm getting some brisket. I'm getting some pork butt and some ribs, and we're starting that stuff late the night before, early in the morning, and that's what we're doing with some mac and cheese. We're doing some mashed potatoes, some of the some normal sides. Get a little, little tiny one, a little tiny chickens and stuff, maybe smoke that too. But yeah, we're going barbecue this year. Forget it. You don't have to do the traditional turkey. I feel like
eat good food. We only
get about being thankful, right?
We only get so many meals on this planet. Make sure they're good. Make sure they're good.
Absolutely. Well, Trevor, thank you so much. We went over. I always go over with my guests because I feel like the conversation just flows. But And you're a wealth of information. But let's get to watching this game. Tell the people where they can find you. I told them where they can find you at the top of the hour, but go ahead, promote yourself, plug whatever you got going on. Obviously, your rankings are up, but what else you got coming down the pipeline?
Man, expanding the rankings, man. I mean, I've already got 250 players ranked for this upcoming class. I mean, we're expanding that to 275, 280 in a couple of weeks to make sure that we've got 7 full rounds unlocked on the PFF mock draft simulator. So again, anytime that you want to dip your toe in the water for 2024 NFL draft season, come on over to pff.com. And then, of course, after you listen to this wonderful podcast and this wonderful show, come out and hang out with us at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We got a YouTube channel. You can listen on Spotify and wherever you get your audio as well. But JC, it was awesome getting to converse with you here, get to talk a little Bucs, and don't worry about going over, man. I know I'm the one who talks way too much, so it's all good, brother. It was a great conversation. I appreciate you having me.
I record with John, so I'm used to it. I think that's where I got it from. Me,
and John and I used to do a podcast together, and it used to be they were like, all right, yeah, keep this to about like a 20-minute daily podcast, and we're like, yeah, all right, 90 minutes, absolutely not.
Like 30 minutes, just do it 30 minutes a week, 30-minute podcast. I'm like, all right, no problem. I'll do 2 of those a week. So like an hour, 45 minutes,
but
an hour.
When you know you got a good show, man, and you got a good show.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on. Tampa Bay Trey, everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Spread the love. Excited to hear about when you guys finally elope on that marriage there. And Christmas time in the city for Tampa Bay Trey over there. Appreciate you, buddy.
Of course, anytime.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.